All right, so we had a crazy week this week. Obviously, the big piece of news, the S&P, the Nasdaq both hit and closed at all-time highs. It was kind of interesting because we seen intraday highs, and then in the last hour of the day, it sold off to just below the all-time high, and then it was bought right back up to 61.74, which is close to the intraday high. I think was around 61.85 roughly. So we closed at an all-time high on the Nasdaq and on the S&P. That was the big piece of news. First things first, though, if you get value out of the video, please like, subscribe, comment, check out those links below. Very much appreciate the support. So I was completely wrong about this. I've been saying recently that I don't see the markets hitting all-time highs, at least in the very near future, and obviously it happened. So I got to acknowledge that I was wrong about this. But the one thing that I think drove this, obviously there's other things as well, but the one thing that I think is really driving this is optimism behind the Fed cutting rates. Number one, in that Trump is going to appoint a dove, right? That's a given, but that won't happen for another, I think it's next May, so that's still 10 months away. But I think that the Fed will be forced to cut. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. The one thing that will throw a wrench into that is inflation, but at least so far, the tariffs haven't been as inflationary as people think. And another thing to point out, too, is that the jobs report recently was worse than expected, which obviously would point to a sign of a weakening economy. The housing data is showing signs of a weakening economy, which again, that all points towards the Fed cutting rates, which hence why I think the market hitting a new all-time high. Now, a lot of things could throw wrenches into this, right? If we see an uptick in inflation, that could cause the markets to sell off. If the Fed's like, hey, we're not cutting, I don't care what Trump says, that could throw a wrench into things. But I still think you have to acknowledge the trend, and the trend is up. So near term, I still think we go up, if anything, but I don't see major legs up, at least until we get more clarity on what's going to happen going forward, because there still is a lot of uncertainty. And that's something that I don't see the market going up a lot given that. But again, obviously stranger things have happened. And again, you always have to be a bull over the long run, right? You always should be a bull over the long run, over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. You're overwhelmingly likely to see the market go up and not down. And even if you think the market's going to go down, trying to time the market is always incredibly hard, and it's typically a losing battle, even if you're a professional. So that's what I think there. Like I said, the trend, when markets hit all-time highs, a lot of times, if you look back at history, that's actually a good time to buy, because all-time highs are typically areas of, if they break below that, if moving averages a lot of times are areas of support, but areas of resistance a lot of times are all-time highs. And when you break through that, especially when you close there, and not only that, the second quarter will be closing on Monday, so we'll see what happens on Monday. Because if we sell off on Monday, especially if it's more than 1% or 2%, if it's a fairly significant sell-off, then that maybe would point towards a reversal. But if we're up on Monday, even if we're flat on Monday, I think that definitely is a sign of a trend, in my opinion. Another important thing here to talk about is year-to-date returns for the top crypto coins or cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin up 15%, ETH down 27%, XRP 2% up, BNB down 8%, Solana down 25%, TRX up 7%, Doge down 50%, ADA down 34%. So again, this is something I've talked about several times, and this is a lesson that people insist on learning the hard way, and that people think that you should diversify within your crypto holdings, or people think that there's actually value to these other cryptocurrencies. And I would acknowledge there is some value, but 99.9% of altcoins are trending towards zero against Bitcoin. That's always been a fact, and that always will be a fact. And trying to predict which 0.1% of them is going to be up against Bitcoin. Yes, some of them will be up over the short term. But again, if your goal is to get rich quick, then honestly, like that, number one, that's just plain old gambling. And number two, this isn't the channel for you. Every coin, 99%, I guess 99.9%, I guess I'll clarify, of altcoins will trend to zero against Bitcoin. That's just the cold hard truth. Another big piece of news from this past week, basically the government is considering allowing Bitcoin holdings or even crypto holdings to be used when going to get a mortgage, which is something that's blatantly obvious. I really don't know why this is even a question. The problem is from Nick Newman here. It looks like Bitcoin held in self-custody will not count as an asset in consideration for home loans. This is a mistake at Bill Pulte. Self-custody is fundamentally aligned with American values. It's trivial to prove ownership of Bitcoin in self-custody. I'm happy to explain how and help. Again, so if you have to hold it on an exchange, yes, that is really, really stupid for obvious reasons. If I have to go into that, then it's probably not. It's not even really worth my time. But the reason why why self-custody shouldn't matter is that you can simply say, hey, here's my Bitcoin address. You keep an eye on it. If it moves, you have a right to margin call me. That's perfectly fair, right? That's perfectly fair. So I think that's the obvious solution to this. Whether or not they'll go for that is I'm not sure. But the idea that you should have to have it on exchange is stupid because, again, for obvious reasons, right? Exchanges have gone under, time and time again. A lot of times their security is lax, like et cetera, et cetera. So this is a good first step. I really need to acknowledge that because there's a lot of, the Bitcoin maxis will be upset about this, and I obviously understand this, but you do have to acknowledge when they make a right first step, because this is definitely a good first step. The next thing here from Joe Burnett, in 5 days, which was actually from a few days ago, MSTR could become eligible for inclusion into the S&P 500, pending committee approval. If included, a tsunami of passive capital will begin chasing Bitcoin. This is very, very big news. The first thing to point out here is MSTR or strategy, they're roughly because their market cap changes a lot. It can go up, down. It's very volatile, so it can go up a lot. But they're roughly the 100th largest company in the U.S. market, which is, again, they're about $100 billion roughly. So they easily qualify by size, right? And the only problem they've run into is you need to have positive earnings. Now, with the changes to the way that accounting can be done recently, they will be able to mark their Bitcoin gains as positive earnings, which will qualify them to be included in the S&P. Now again, the S&P is not like the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq automatically is the top 100 companies no matter what. The S&P, you need to be in the top 500, and the committee needs to approve you. Now, honestly, I have no idea how fuddy this committee is. We'll see, because if they don't include them, to me it makes no sense whatsoever. Because if MSTR was like 450th largest company in the U.S., I could understand not being included. But when they're around 100, to me that's just absolute insanity to not include them. So we'll see how that goes. But the one big piece of news here is, if they are included, which again they almost certainly will qualify, the question is, will they be approved? This will mean a massive amount of capital going into MSTR, because the largest ETFs in the U.S., I believe, number one is SPY, and number two is I'm completely drawing a blank on the Vanguard one, VOO. And not to mention too, I mean VTI, and a lot of these they'll be included in eventually as well. They're already in the Nasdaq one, which I believe is a top 5 one as well. So it's only a matter of time until MSTR is included in all of these top indexes. And there is a lot of investors that their entire investing strategy is they simply put, $100, $200, $50, $500, $1,000, whatever the number is every month, into SPY into VOO. There's millions of people worldwide that is their entire investing strategy. And when that happens, some of that money will be included in MSTR. And not to mention too, the higher MSTR's market cap goes, the easier it'll be for them to borrow, right? The more indexes they're included in, the easier it'll be for them to borrow. So this is nothing but good news for MSTR. If they don't include them this time, honestly, it's not the end of the world. They're just going to keep growing. The price of Bitcoin will keep going up, and eventually it's going to be too hard for them to ignore. And not to mention, too, it really doesn't benefit them not to include them, right? It really doesn't. I mean, it would only add, like how many people, how many eyeballs will it attract by having MSTR in the index? So it really makes no sense not to add them. I believe Coinbase is in there, and like MSTR is obviously a better investment than Coinbase. So I think that this is going to be very good. MSTR is my largest position in. I'll be frank, it's my largest position in my growth portfolio. In my dividend portfolio, it's MSTY, which is basically MSTR. So, I mean, they're honestly, MSTR and MSTY probably make up, I bet you it's 20 or 30% of my maybe even more, to be honest. Maybe it could be very well be pushing half of my, overall stock portfolio. And not to mention too, I have probably 1 or 2%, maybe 3% in MST, the Canadian MSTY, and in MSTE. So, yeah, let's just say that I'm very bullish on MSTR. It's only a matter of time until they get into the S&P. It's only a matter of time until more people catch on to what they're doing. And not to mention, too, their profitability is probably, like, if they're included, their profits from this past quarter is probably in the top 100 in the S&P. It's not even like their earnings are just squeezed, like they're just barely positive. Like their earnings are like, I think they're bordering on $10 billion. So yeah, let's just say that this is going to be very good news for MSTR. Again, I could be wrong about all of this stuff. Obviously do your own research. Again, I'm just a guy. But I'm very bullish on MSTR. I think that they're very undervalued where they're at right now. They are by far the largest Bitcoin treasury company, and they deserve to, like, look at Metaplanet's. Again, I'm not saying Metaplanet's bad by any means. I think they're very good. But look at, like, Metaplanet trades at a far larger premium than MSTR does. And Metaplanet has like 10,000 Bitcoin, I think, and MSTR is almost 600,000. So I think that MSTR is by far the most undervalued Bitcoin treasury company. And the thing about Bitcoin treasury companies is that if the concept catches on, you're guaranteed that, again, MSTR might not perform the best, but they're still going to perform well. But if Bitcoin, like, let's just say that the Bitcoin treasury, strategy goes nowhere, then they're all going to go down. Right? They're all going to go down. So, in my opinion, it's not that MSTR is safe. Don't get me wrong, because they're very volatile and in a lot of ways they are risky. But compared to all of the other ones, in my mind, they are by far the safest because they have by far the most Bitcoin. Right? Just my opinion. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about this week. If you liked the video, you got value, like I said, please check out those links, hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.